Does it run loud? Does it run loud like always? When I was a freshman, I was taking discrete with Dunham. We had like a big kiss in the back, we just sit back there and like play League on there. It's like so loud.
All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. This is 5323, 7323. Hopefully everyone's in the right class. I'm imagining you're not here for the help desk, which we're going to use this room, though. So let me go over a quick agenda for today. I'm going to do introductions, me and you. We're going to do very brief introductions of you guys because there's 21 of you, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of class time doing that. We're going to go over class logistics. I'm going to tell you what this class is all about, some of the goals that we have. I'm also going to talk about how to do well in this class, so you kind of have an expectation of, okay, this will give me an A, this will give me a B, this will give me a C. And then we're going to go over the syllabus. I'm only going to do highlights from it. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading the syllabus to you. You can go ahead and go and look that up. But I am going to do the highlights such as grading and things so that we're clear on a lot of the baseline things that we're going to do throughout the course. And then at the very end of class, I'm going to go over Xcode and I'm going to go over Git. How many people use Git? That is awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, good. Oh, I'm going to try and make, so I'm doing a screen capture right now. I'm going to try and make videos of this course and try to somehow make them available on Blackboard. I don't know, these file sizes are going to get pretty big. So that way, if we're going through something really, really quickly, we've got a lot of code that I'm going through and just typing along. That way you're not like trying to, go through and type a bunch of stuff into Xcode and kind of, stay up with me. You can always go back and look at the video. I'm not really using that, attendance is going to be required. So it's also a way, if you need to make up a lecture, you can make up a lecture by looking at the video and you're not kind of completely missing out on things. But I don't know how smoothly that's going to go, and we'll see. Because this is, basically there's not a distance learning portion of this course, right? And so all of those videos aren't readily available. I'm just kind of doing what I can with screen recording. All right, introductions, me. So my name's Eric Larson. You can call me Dr. Larson if you want to. I will answer to that. I prefer you call me Eric. And that way I will answer to that too. I did my undergrad and master's at Oklahoma State. However, I finished off my PhD. Do we have enough chairs?
I think it's the last one.
The last one? Okay, so if you're the last two people of the class, you just stand. Can you? I think there's a vacant class right next to us. Just kind of grab a chair and bring it in here, and we'll put it back when we're done. Next class period, we'll have enough chairs. I think we're too short. So after that, I went to Seattle. I went to the University of Washington where I did my PhD. And a lot of the research that I've been doing is in signal, image, and video processing. Oh, you're a good man. You brought two chairs. Excellent. And a lot of the things I do on how to combine digital signal processing in mobile computing, how to use machine learning in mobile computing. So basically this is the class I always wanted to do. Okay, this is my bread and butter. I'm excited about this class. I know a lot about this class. And this class is also going to be geared a little bit towards mobile health. Not a whole lot. There's going to be a couple of things that we'll do where we're actually looking at mobile health and how do you actually use the sensors on a mobile phone to sense things about a person that has to do with health, baselines, heart rate, things like that. I've also done research in sustainability, although that's probably not going to incorporate into this class. There might be, if there's a final project that somebody wants to work on that has a sustainability component that I can help out with that. That'd be great. I have a website, eclarson.com. You can go to there. It also, if you go there, you can go under teaching, and you can also get to the course website for here, right? Introductions. Okay, I want to know just a little bit about you guys. So I want to know your name. obviously. I also want to know what you go by, so I'm going to write that down if you go by an alias, so that I can call you what you want. And then I'd like to know the department and major that you come from. Even though I have that information, I want to hear it from you. And this also gives me a chance to kind of put names with faces that aren't pictures. So anybody can start. Start over here.
I'm Matthew Tonemaker. I go by Matt. I'm in the electrical engineering department, and yeah.
Awesome. You know, tell me something interesting. One interesting fact.
One interesting fact, I do research in wireless network planning.
Awesome.
I'm Chelsea. I'm a computer science major, and I went to UT this summer.
My name is Hunter Howson. I'm computer science as well. Did a math minor in creative computation, and I'm from Houston, Texas. An interesting fact. I don't know. I want to learn a lot about mobile development. I guess I would like to do that as a career. I think it would be fun.
Awesome.
My name's, well, it's probably in there as John, but I go by Rowdy. I am a CSE, computer science major. My interesting fact is I play Ultimate Frisbee.
Awesome. I don't. Sorry.
It's fun, you should.
I should? All right.
I'm Matt Devoto. I'm a master's student finishing in doing 4+1 in comp sci, and I'm also a TA here in the CSE department.
I'm Jason Murphy. I'm also doing 4+1 doing security engineering, and my interesting fact is I'm actually teaching a class also this semester.
Really? What class?
1342.
Nice. Is that the intro programming? Nice. You guys decide who's next in the queue. I don't know.
I'm Hector. I'm a computer science major, and the interesting thing is I'm from Mexico.
That is interesting.
Okay, I'm Carly Kubicek, computer science major, and I love Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish.
Nice.
My name is Gavin Benedict. Computer science major. My interesting fact, I guess, is that I worked at Microsoft this summer.
Where?
Up in Redmond.
In Redmond?
Yeah, I lived in the Mercer Court apartments on UW's campus.
Who'd you work with?
It was Windows Azure Mobile Services.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Connor Knudsen. I'm a computer engineering major, and I also want to do mobile development as a career.
I'm Cameron Keith. I'm a computer science major, and my interesting fact is that I play 5 different instruments.
Nice. Maybe you could do an instrument final project here, which would be really cool. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
I'm Lauren Smith. I go by Lauren. 4+1 student as well in the electrical engineering department. Interesting fact is I used to be an intramural rep for all the sports: beach volleyball, basketball, soccer, all of them.
Nice. Do you have a specialization?
Oh, with electrical?
Yeah.
Because that's my undergrad.
Gotcha.
Sam Dorr, go by Sam, and I'm a security engineering 4+1 student. And the interesting fact is that my job I'm going to go to this summer has nothing to do with security engineering.
I'm Chris King. I'm a 4+1 security engineering student, and I'm Dr. Nayer's research assistant in cloud security.
I'm Rita Anoni. I'm from UM, and my major is electrical engineering, and I'm the body of
Gotcha.
My name is Kevin Donahue. I'm a computer science major, and I'm learning to play guitar.
I'm Amanda Doyle. I'm a computer science major with a business minor. And interesting fact is I taught myself how to program in iOS and wrote an app last year, so I'm excited to take the class on it.
Very cool. Did you put it on the App Store? Nice.
I'm Nathan Hillis, comp sci, and interesting fact is I coach volleyball.
Cool.
I'm Eric Trexel. Most people just call me Trexel, whatever you prefer. Computer science, and my interesting fact is for the past 2 summers, I've been with a company called Qualcomm working on a Univision library for mobile platforms. So,
oh, nice.
I'm Justin Trent.
computer science major here. I guess my interesting facts about the project. I'm Daniel Salcedo. I'm a computer science major, and my interesting fact is I work 2 doors down the hallway.
And you set up all of these computers, which is nice. Okay, awesome. It's great to meet you. I hope you guys were paying attention because this is going to be a team-based course, right? So we'll get to that. Okay, course logistics. Lecture, 3:30 to 4:50. You know that because you're here. My office hours are negotiable, but right now I've got them set as Friday from 12 to 2. The reason that I have them on Friday from 12 to 2 is because all of your assignments are due on a Friday at 5 o'clock. And so this kind of gets all of it. In some ways it's good because it allows you to get all of your questions, all your ducks in a row and come ask me about it. In some ways it's bad because if you have problems before that, or say like on Thursday, I'm not necessarily immediately available until Friday, so we can make the office hours negotiable. One of the things that you'll have to do is every time you have a lab, you're gonna have to show me the application, right? And show me it running and doing what it was supposed to do, so that I have an idea about, your implementation. You're gonna turn in the source code and everything, but you'll have to show it to me as well. So having it on Friday from 12 to 2 also makes sense in that regard. Lab, tentatively we had it set up for Wednesday night. And the lab is basically really, it's just a time for you to come in. A lot of you I know don't have access to a Mac, right? And so we have a bunch of Mac minis. They're all brand new and they're installed in here. They're gonna be in that case over there. So that, this lab time is basically this set aside time when you can come in as a team, program, try and finish one of the labs, and I will be here to ask, to answer questions, right? So you can come in this lab any evening that you want and work on the assignment on the Mac Mini, and there's some iPhone 5s or 5Ss in there that we can do dev on. So you'll have access to all of the hardware, right? I just won't be around necessarily when you're working on it. Right, and the lab component is not going to be required. It's just a nice time to set aside so that I can be here and answer questions. So if I were to say, okay, lab's going to be from Wednesday 5 to 7, how many people does that conflict with? What about Tuesday 5 to 7? Monday 5 to 7. Oh, wow, that's really awful. Thursday 5 to 7. 2.
Why not Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
Wednesday, well, I'm just looking at how many conflicts there are. Wednesday, it looked like I had 4 conflicts. Thursday, it looks like I have 2. The reason I like Wednesday is because it's right after this. You can kind of get started and jump in. You don't have to do it. So how many people did it conflict for on Wednesday? 5 to 7? 1, 2, 3. 3. This is like Lord of the Flies in here on when the lab session goes. Let's tentatively do Wednesday from 5 to 7, and basically let me get with you guys to see what we can do about some of these courses. Is it another course or is it like a job?
Technically it's 6:30 to 9:30 class, so we get the first hour and a half.
Okay. Oh, all right. Is that Hoffler's course?
It's
Oh, that's right. Information retrieval. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And it's a good course to have in conjunction with this one. Okay. So the room, crew 484, we're going to do lecture, we're going to do lab in here. Also, the help desk is in here. However, even when the help desk is going on, you guys can, I'm told, you can go ahead and come in here and work, on, choose one of the minis and set it up and you can work in here. I like having this room because it sets, it gives a place for you to go as a team and do some coding as a team. The course website and the syllabus you can find online. That is the course website. I'll make these slides available. So go on there, check it out. We're going to use Blackboard for video. I'm going to have you turn in your source code on Blackboard. I'm going to do grading, and I'm going to try and do nothing else on Blackboard. Okay? It's a little bit buggy, and I don't like the interface. If Blackboard ever goes down on Friday at 4:30 and you're trying to turn something in, just email it to me. Okay? Don't email me and tell me Blackboard was down, because email me and give me the assignment. All right? Xcode projects are not very big. Just email it to me. Okay? Okay, what is this course and what is this course not? Mobile sensing is that's what this course starts with. It's in the course name. That is basically what we're going to be doing. So are we going to be doing activity recognition? Yes, we're going to be doing activity recognition. We're going to be doing step counting. We're going to be doing, climbing stairs, right? So we're going to use the mobile phone. We're going to get access to the sensors to do some interesting things that are on the phone. Activity sensing is one of them. Audio analysis, absolutely. That would be real-time audio analysis. So whether you have an instrument that is feeding into the phone, whether you're working with songs that are on the phone, we're going to be doing some analysis on that. Image analysis, yes, and video analysis. We're going to be doing processing with the built-in libraries that are in iOS. We're also going to do some things with OpenCV. Machine learning, yeah, we're going to do some machine learning. But really, that's going to be for doing inference on all of this data that we're getting from the sensors, right? So most of the machine learning we're going to be doing is actually you're going to host either on one of the minis or on your laptop. The phone is going to be sitting there kind of querying this model that you've built somewhere else. And that's really a good way of doing things on a mobile phone because you don't want to be doing a lot of machine learning training on the mobile phone. You want to do data collection on the phone, training somewhere else, and then if you're doing local predictions like, I'm not exactly sure exactly yet, but if you're going to be doing some advanced inference, so is someone doing activity A, you want to query a server for that information. Right? So basically, you're going to be building a cloud infrastructure. Really, it's just a server. Okay. Microcontroller communication. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to need a microcontroller to get access to different sensors and devices that are not located on the mobile phone. We're going to be using low energy Bluetooth to do that. I've also got that hardware in the cabinet over there. So we're going to be doing some microcontroller programming. If you've never done microcontroller programming, don't worry about it. It's an Arduino with a Bluetooth shield. You'll be fine. Okay, if you have done microcontroller programming, great, awesome. You're ahead of the game, right? You're going to be able to get in there and do a lot of things with the microcontroller that's there. I like Arduino because you still have access to a lot of the ARM commands that are there. So if you know a lot about what you're doing with the ARM programming, you're going to be able to just natively be able to make a bunch of calls. I'm not going to explicitly teach you how to program on a microcontroller, but you'll pick it up quickly enough, don't worry. General iOS development, yeah, for the most part. I mean, really, we're going to have to get you through some basic skills on programming in iOS. I know a lot of you have never programmed for iOS or on Xcode or have never used a Mac before. That's fine. We're going to go through the basics. We're going to go through a crash course of the basics. It's going to be, we're going to basically do lightning rounds to get everybody up to speed really, really quickly. Okay, so if you've done iOS programming before, the first assignment is going to be a breeze. If you haven't, it's going to be sink or swim. All right, but that's okay. I would rather you guys get wrapped in all because everything that we're going to learn about user interface design, about iOS, we're going to learn basically within the first 2 weeks. After that, we're going to learn how to get access to all of these sensors, right? And there's really good reason for that, which we'll talk about in a second. Animation and graphics, not in this course. Okay, that's not what we're going to be doing. We're going to have to use a little bit of animation. We're going to have to use a little bit of graphics, but that's really not the content of this course. There's plenty of tutorials and information and free courses on doing iOS animation. There is not a lot of free courses on the content that we are going to be talking about in this class. Okay. User interface design, yeah, a little bit, right? We're going to have to learn how to do a lot of the basics of user interface design. Now, sir.
This is a little off topic.
Yeah, go for it.
If there's any reason you chose iOS over Android.
Yes, there is. I don't know if there's a great reason. One of the reasons is iOS really isn't offered at the university a lot. That helped me get a lot of the grant funding to get you a bunch of development phones and a lot of the Mac Minis that you see here, right? So not a great reason, but it does give us, some hardware to be able to prototype on, right? And this is going to be hardware that's going to stick around at the university, right? So if anybody wants to come in and do a little bit of iOS development, they have access to do it in this lab, right? Although, on the flip side of that, I like iOS, especially in some of the research that I do, because the hardware is standardized, okay? So a lot of the things that we're going to be working on, we're going to assume some things about the accelerometer, the gyroscope, or the audio and how it's coming in, and that's not necessarily the case if you're on an Android, right? And that's one of the strengths of Android is that so many phones that are out there. It's also one of the weaknesses if you're a programmer trying to develop and know the specifics of the sensors that are on that device. Okay, so iOS provides us a little bit of kind of consistency, right? So that's the main reason. I do like iOS. I have nothing against Android, and it's open source. So like if you're trying to do stuff with wireless, Android's the way to go, right? iOS just doesn't expose that in the API, right? That's one of the things. If it's not exposed on iOS, you don't get access to it, okay? Which is, Apple, in all of their wisdom, has chosen the things that you should have access to. It also means, and don't root any of these phones, by the way, okay? Leave them stock. We're going to be doing development on them. We'll get certificates for everybody, but don't root the phone, okay? Okay, so for what we don't cover, like animation, graphics, a lot of the basic iOS stuff, take the free Stanford iOS course. It's a great course. Paul Haggerty, right? He's the instructor for that over at Stanford. You can go in there and really kind of learn about model view controllers. You can go in and learn about a lot of the animation and graphics that are new even in iOS 7, right? So it's an updated course. You can go on and take those courses, and because those exist there, I'm trying to make this course as complementary to that as possible, without having to make you actually go take those courses, right? If you're interested, you'll be ahead of the game. Go ahead and take them. Otherwise, we're going to do a crash course in a lot of the development that's there. Okay. Only the prerequisite for this class is a little bit about model-based coding, okay? Because iOS is completely model-based, 100%, okay? Although you can write native C code, right? So it doesn't have to be model-based coding. But the entire kit for iOS is model-based, right? So understand things like polymorphism and, if you're doing inheritance, right? And we'll talk a little bit about each of those. If you don't know what model-based coding is, you're going to struggle a little bit, but if you're motivated enough, you can get through it, okay? There's no prerequisites that I can think of, as long as if you've coded before, that would just kind of hinder you from taking this course. It just might be a little more difficult, okay? So if you're a computer science major, you're going to find some of this review as we're going over things. If you've done a lot of MVCs, model view controller architectures before, you're going to find some of this review. If not, great, you're going to learn a little something. For EEs, a lot of the, depending on what track you're in EE, some of the real-time analysis and the sensor data is going to be a little bit of review, or you might have seen before. But we're quickly going to get past that. So you'll know a little bit of one of the lectures when we start talking about like sampling rates and things. But then we're going to go into things like the Fourier transform, how to analyze frequencies. We're going to go beyond that. If we have time, I'd like to get into linear predictive coding so that you can really analyze sounds and speech and replicate sounds that are that exist in the world, basically from the speakers that are on the iPhone. Okay. If you're in creative computation, awesome. This class, creativity and design are going to be rewarded very, very highly in the labs that are there. So be unique, especially in the final project. Basically, novelty in your design for the final project is going to get you a lot of points, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. So the course goals, just to kind of reiterate, we're going to get an exposure to iOS development. We're going to talk about model view controllers. I want you to understand how to use the embedded sensors that are on the phone, how to use them properly. And not just using the API, but really like getting a sensor stream and doing something interesting with it. I want you to get an exposure to machine learning, at least how to use it, not necessarily how to design your own algorithms. But, has anybody ever heard of like Big ML? Well, if you haven't, we're basically going to create a generic server where you can query it for all the different predictions. You can also upload a bunch of different labeled data and say, hey, train this. It will train a model to come up with predictions that you want. And now you say, hey, I have this new feature. Here are the numbers for that feature vector. I'd really like to know, what activity this is, or what type of sound this is, or, if this is an image, I'm trying to do some tracking in the image, right? Let's do it via this. What comes along with that, you're going to know how to do some real-time analysis, how to work with data streams, especially in some of the things in mobile health, right? So one of the labs that we're going to be doing is how to ascertain heart rate from the camera, okay? I also want you to learn how to present and pitch different applications, right? So we're going to go over basically, how to pitch a design because, the end demonstration for this course, I'm going to have you pitch me your design, right? You're going to have 10 minutes and we're going to go through it. And we're going to do that instead of a final. There's no test in this course, by the way. How to do well. All right. A lot of these are going to be generic. I'm still going to say them because inevitably somebody's going to, say, oh, well, I thought that I could do it with this, and I'm just going to point you back to this slide. Complete the lab assignments on time. There's no such thing as a late assignment. Turn in whatever you have in. It's better than turning it in late because there is no late, right? That's a 0. Okay, so Friday by 5 o'clock, 5:15, I'm not going to ding you for that. But it's going to show up on Blackboard as, hey, this was turned in late, and it's going to tell me how late it was turned in. Start the lab assignments early. If you start it, Thursday, the Friday before it's due, you're going to run into some issues, right? And I'm not going to be able to really answer questions, and I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of sympathy for you. Same respect, I know that you're juggling probably 2 or 3 other courses with this, okay? However, the lab assignments are really, really important. They're 60% of your grade, okay? So each lab assignment, well, we'll go into that. Iterate your design and test your apps on the device, right? Because basically when you bring something to me, I am going to stress test your app. I'm going to do this. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to start shaking it around. I'm going to try and break your application, okay? And as long as it doesn't crash, that's probably fine. But iterate and go through and make sure that all of those bugs are found, right? If I turn it into landscape mode and all of a sudden buttons start disappearing, you're going to get dinged for that a lot, okay? I'm also going to look at your source code. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to make sure that you're following good practices that we talk about in class, okay? Which use good coding practices, right? Recycle as much code as you can, right? So when you're doing assignment 1, try to recycle all of that. Have fun. Seriously, have fun, right? We're going to do a lot of the lab assignments in here I think are fun. You should think are fun. So have fun, okay? And collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You're going to be working in teams. Go ahead and collaborate with other teams. If you're having trouble with something, ask another team how they did it. And be open to other teams, right? It's like, hey, we kind of did it this way. Don't duplicate code, right? Like, don't use the exact same code that some other team did. But I understand that there's some ways of implementing things that probably are going to be common across teams. I'm not going to ding you for that. That's not cheating in my book, okay? But, the more issues that you guys run into and solve on your own, basically, the better you're going to be prepared to deal with this in a real case scenario, right? If you were developing an iOS app, you want to do something really cool. Let's say you're developing a game. Then you will have seen a lot of these things and seen how someone else solved it, which is just as important as coming up with your own solution, right? Getting kind of a lot of different views. And come to class, which is really nice. In fact, we'll just start off the syllabus. Attendance in here is required. The lab is not required, but it's something that I think you should take advantage of because I'll be here to answer questions. You can have 3 absences from this class and have it not affect your grade, right? And I don't care what those absences really are, okay? Right? So you have a death in the family, God forbid it, but take one of those, and basically, I'm not going to ask any questions if you didn't come to class. The 4th time you miss class, 2% from the grade, we're just going to start docking it. For every absence after that, we'll just subtract 2% from your final grade. However, I'm not just going to ding you that. If you show up to every single class, right, I'm going to go ahead and give you just 1% extra credit in the class, right? So if you got an 89, bam, you got an A. Okay? Lab assignments, we're going to have 6 of them. Each lab assignment is 10% of your grade. And the lab assignment, I'm going to make things really, really easy on the grading. It's going to be out of 10, right? So if you get an 8 out of 10, the max you can get in the class is 98%. Okay? And we'll just keep going on from there, right? So it's really easy to calculate what your grade is in the class right now. Okay? Most of the lab assignments are 2 weeks long, except for when we go into doing activity recognition and getting access to the accelerometer and gyroscope. That is going to be a 1-week lab. And the reason that is a 1-week lab is because we have iPhone 5S's. And almost all of that now is really taken care of for you with the M7 coprocessor. Okay? And if you've never programmed with the M7 coprocessor, wow. If it's not on Android now, you're going to see it really, really soon because it makes things super easy to work with, okay? Like, we're going to just query it for things like, are we still? Are we in a car? Are we walking? Are we running? How many steps have we counted today or since our application started, okay? It's really, really easy to work with. And again, I'm going to try to make this video available in Blackboard, and we'll see how that works out after this course, or after this class. So there's going to be one assignment. You turn in one assignment per team, not per person, okay? The teams that you work on, you guys get to choose the teams that you work on. You have to have a minimum of 2 people, a maximum of 3 people, all right? So teams of 2 to 3, right? So assignment 1 is up right now. You can go check it out on the course website. If your team, you guys can get together and start working on it, that's completely fine. But just know who your team is, okay? And that's why you should have paid attention to everybody when they were introducing themselves, so you can know who to choose, all right? Choose a team member that is better than you at coding, all right? And if you can't, well, that's okay, right? If you choose your friend, that's fine. If they're not very good at coding, well, it's not great for you. But, you'll get through it. Questions?
You put up that you need the provision by 5C or 5S. Does a 5C also work? Do they have the same?
You can use a 5C except for, I think, Lab 3. Lab 3, you have to use the M7 coprocessor. So I have 8 iPhone 5Ss that anybody can check out. So for, maybe for that 1 week lab, you guys have to form new teams unless you have access to a 5S, right? So since there's 21 people in here, we could have 8 teams of, well, 8, so many teams of 3 and then a couple of teams of 2, and everyone would still have access to a 5S. However, based on the survey results that you guys gave me, a lot of people already have a 5S. You'll have to provision that, and I'm working on getting the university developer license stuff worked out. But if push comes to shove, we can just I can provision your phone so that you can develop on it. Normally, Apple requires that you pay this $99 licensing fee so you can be a developer. And you also get access to a bunch of things that are there. But the university, you'll be able to do all of that for free with the university developer license. And if not, we'll just take your phone, we'll hook it up to my computer, I'll provision it and get a certificate for you, and that way you can just start developing on it. Question?
When we check out the iPhones, do you have to do that each week, or do you check it out for the semester?
I think the way that it's going to work out is each team is going to be basically, we'll check out an iPhone, and you will probably use that iPhone for the duration of the semester, right? And probably, teams that need it, each team will get a Mac Mini that they can check out and use for the semester. Keep those in this room as much as possible, okay? And the reason for that is that I do want this to be a generic place. If other people want to come in that aren't in this class, do a little iOS development, I'd like that to be available to them, right? So if you have those things, in the locker, they can come to me, get some codes, and check everything out, right? If you need to work at home, which is entirely possible, then okay, just try to keep it to a minimum. Don't, overnight, okay, if you're leaving it there for 2 weeks without it coming back into the classroom, well, that's a problem. Yeah. Okay, so hardware is in the locker. How do you get to the locker? Well, let me close this thing up. I'm going to go ahead and close this thing. Just because. Okay, so in this locker, the key is here. The combination is 8689. Okay? You're going to be using that code everywhere in this class. I'm going to try and make it part of logging on all of these computers. So 8689, do not give that out to people, right? And the only reason is because we're going to have somewhere around 10 grand worth of equipment just sitting in that locker. But it's really incognito, right? I don't know where we got this locker, but it's great. You would never notice that there's 10 grand worth of stuff in there. The iPhones and things that you check out, don't lose them. Don't lose them. Someone's got to pay for that, and I'm not going to pay for it. But you know, like, so we'll come to you. And these are you know, these are unlocked iPhones, right? So they're somewhere around $650 a piece, plus tax. And we got some Mac Minis here, which cost less than the iPhones. But they're also here as well. And everything's brand new, right? Which means that also that we haven't installed, a lot of these Mac Minis don't have Xcode installed on them yet, which I will remedy by Monday. Okay. One of the things we're also going to have to do is get everyone card swipe access to this room. I am told that as long as you don't drop by Friday, come Monday, you will have card swipe access to this room. Okay. Also, if you have an iPhone 5S, and I see a lot of Mac laptops anyway, you are welcome to develop on your own stuff, right? Which you probably, I would want to do, right? However, all of this stuff is there for people that need it. Okay? Happiness? Good. The final project is worth 40% of your grade. Okay, so 60% in the 6 labs, and then there's going to be this one final project worth 40% of your grade. 25% is going to be from your demonstration and your pitch, and also the source code and stuff that's there, right? So that is me grading you for 25% of your grade on your final project demonstration, right? So you will propose to me I'm going to build this app, and it's going to do these 4 things. It better do those 4 things, okay? And you're going to have some constraints on what those 4 things, what you're meeting right there. It's going to have to use at least 3 of the things that we're learning from the different labs. So each lab is based around, something. The first lab is going to be based around, user interface design. You're going to have you're probably going to have a user interface on your mobile phone. You don't necessarily have to have it. So that would be, you're meeting one of the lab requirements there. And then, okay, I'm doing some audio analysis. I'm doing something with motion. Those are all 3 combined, right? Most likely, you're also going to be doing the machine learning part of it too, because the very last lab, I'm letting kind of transition. I'm leaving it pretty open-ended on what it needs to do so that you can kind of transition that into your final project and have it be the first kind of rough draft for the final project that you do in the last lab. Does that come out okay? You guys understand what I'm saying? Yeah? I see some nodding heads. All right, fair enough. 15% is going to come from a web page. And it's basically, I want you guys to create a summary of what your application does and why it's useful. I want you to make a video. I basically want it to be like something you would see on Kickstarter. Do you guys know what Kickstarter is? Lots of nodding heads. Basically, if you were going to create a company around this application and sell it, I want you to pitch that to me as if you would see it something on Kickstarter or what's the other one, Indiegogo or that kind of thing. Make a video, right? And make things a little more verbose than if you were just putting it on Kickstarter, because I, as an instructor, want to know more information about the application and how you did X, Y, and Z, which if you were forming a company, you might want to keep a trade secret. But I want to know more about it. I would really like you to host that publicly so that I can basically get on there and see what you've been up to, right? So starting, once you turn in the last lab, then you're going to put this web page up of here's my proposal. And I can just get onto everybody's web page and see what your progress is as we go throughout the semester, right? For the last, I think, 3 or 4 weeks of the class, right? When you're doing your final project. So that would be great. You don't have to host it publicly if maybe you really do want to take this and form a company out of it after you leave. You don't have to host it publicly, but I do want to see the web page source code, right? So package all your HTML and JavaScript and just throw it onto Blackboard, right? And then just keep updating that assignment so that I can open it up and take a look, okay? Now, you don't necessarily have to do that web page. Have you guys ever heard of the mother of all demos? Matt, I know you have because I talked about it. But Douglas Engelbart, mother of all demos? No? Nothing? You guys call yourself computer scientists. Okay, so basically, go look it up on YouTube, right? You go into, it's like 1968, and this guy, he's coming out of, the Xerox Park, and he says, hey, I've got a demo that I'd like to give to people, and he goes in there, this is, 1968, and he comes in and he says, he shows video conferencing, multi-editing like Google Docs, video, across the this is before the internet, right? And he comes out and he does this thing, and it's known as the mother of all demos because it basically did everything, and it took until 1996 for everybody to kind of catch up with what this guy had done in 1968. Okay? You have the option to do, well, basically the same thing, what I'm calling the mother of all demos. So you can opt in to do the mother of all demos, which says, okay, on demonstration day, here's some constraints for my project. They're a little bit harder than if I was just, doing, the regular thing where I was also going to create a web page. But here are the constraints that I am going to meet on demonstration day. And instead of turning in a web page to me, if you meet all of those constraints, you've met the mother of all demos, you get that 15% of your grade for free. You don't have to do the web page, okay? It's going to be harder, and those constraints, I'm serious about those constraints, okay? If you say that your app is going to do something in 5 seconds and it takes 5.1 seconds, the mother of all demos is not met, the web page is due 6 hours later, okay? So it is risky. It is risky. I have had in previous courses where I've done some of this. People have done the mother of all demos before and met it. I've had one team basically failed, but I'm not going to give you credit just for the mother of all demos just because I'm a nice guy. Okay? So it is risky to do, but if you're cocky enough to do it, I'm okay with that, right? Anyway, so you're welcome to do that. I think this is also kind of like an industrial type mechanism too, where if you say you're going to do something in industry and you fail, well, that's not going to be so great. So it's going to be basically the same thing here, except if you fail in this, it's just an academic grade. It's not your job. So if you're going to fail, you should do it in the class, right, rather than at work. But go ahead and put some pressure on yourself and do it. So for the next class, go ahead and look at the class website. I've got the syllabus up and everything. How are we doing on time? Doing all right. We're good. Assignment 1 is already up. Go ahead and get a team together. Groups of 2 to 3, no exceptions. Everyone, if you're on a team, don't just have one person code. I've got a demo after this, so don't start packing up yet. I'm going to try and we might use the whole time today. Sorry. Pick good team members with different skills than you, okay, so that you guys can complement each other. Once you see someone else code, that is the best learning mechanism that you can have, okay? All right, so everybody codes, contribute equally, contribute to the design, have some well thought out ways of working on a team. I'm not going to tell you how to work on a team, and if you have some team disputes, I would rather you work it out as a team, right? You only go to the manager if there's just something you can't work out, okay, that is just fundamentally different, and then I will help you go through that, maybe. Yeah, and take turns watching each other code. I know. Try to watch each other code, right? Just sit and code together and talk about this and that. And it's the only way that you're going to get better, okay? Now let's do a demo. Well, let's talk about Git. Everybody's done Git before. It's built into Unix, right? Which, and therefore it is built into OS X because OS X is built on top of the Unix kernel. It's also built into Xcode, right? So basically, use it when developing on teams. Use it when developing by yourself because of all of the different things that are there. It supports branching, merging, all of that jazz, right? So you guys know what I'm saying when I say branch. Some nods. Let's talk about it. Okay. So you can use the command line to do Git, right? So if you were to open up any of these Mac Minis and log on, you could open up a terminal and do git init. It's going to init an empty repository, okay? So basically, that's going to be a repository that keeps track of all of the versions that you've ever committed to Git, right? This is a version tracking. And it keeps track of all of the branch. And all of that is in the repository locally. It's not on a repository in a server, although it can be. All of that is saved locally. So if you wanted to, open up a branch, you just have to say branch and then whatever the branches that you're trying to go to. And all of that will just come locally. It will check everything out for you. So you're always going to have a master, and then you'll have some branches that come across from different versions where you're trying different things out. Okay, so the working copy, if you want to sync that with the local repository, you basically do commits and checkouts. to go back and forth between your working copy and the local repository. You can also have a remote repository, and you can do push-pull, right? So you can sync things with the local repository. So let me very, very quickly go through this here. So if I were to go to terminal here, change directory, let's go to the desktop. Let's make a directory, I don't know, call it example, right? Okay, let's change directory, go to the example. Okay, so now I'm in here. Can everybody see that font? I'm trying to work on this. So I could do this thing, get init. Voila. I've got a local repository in there. Everything is stored in that .git directory right there. And that's basically the entire repository that's going to be stored in there. There's nothing in it, right? So if I were to go git status, oh, come on. Sorry, new keyboard. There's nothing to commit. I have no files to commit. But if I were to put a file in here, some file, whatever. Let's do this. Some text into some file dot text. So now I've got that in there. The first thing you want to do is add it to the repository. You could do git add some file like this. Normally, as long as you've got your git ignore set up, which tells git all the file extensions to ignore, you can just do git add dot, right? Because anything that's not in the git ignore, you're going to want to commit in all likelihood, right? So we can do that. Now if I do git status, I've got a new file in there. It still needs to be committed. Commit. What do we? Git commit, and then I need to give it some kind of message that actually tells it what I'm doing. So this would be the first commit. Normally you'd want to say something here, which is, you know, I'm committing X, Y, and Z. This is what I did, and it still works. This is why I'm committing it to the repository. Bam, it's there. Okay. You shouldn't really have to use the command line because Xcode has a graphical interface for working with Git automatically. It's going to automatically create a lot of the local repositories for you. However, every once in a while, you'll have some merges, some commits that Xcode doesn't have the graphical interface to handle. So if you want to do, you know, some of the more advanced things, you want to do, if you have to fix anything, usually you'll have to go back to the command line. Okay, and fix a lot of the things that are there. If your repository gets broken, or there's, you know, different branches, one's ahead of the other, a lot of the things you can do with Xcode, but as it gets more complicated, you just kind of have to come back. And does anybody have an interface, the graphical interface that they use that they really like for Git?
So they have an app for it for the computer.
Yeah, for.
I said GitHub has an app.
Oh, GitHub has an app.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you? Yeah. Can you do things like blame?
I don't know about that, but what we were talking about was like the branches and stuff. You can monitor that.
Okay.
You'll have to look at it. It's just called
GitHub. Okay, so it's on GitHub, right? Which GitHub is a place where you can do a lot of your remote server things. Everything on GitHub has to be public unless you pay. Is that right?
You can get a student license.
You can get a student license and keep things private.
Or like free private repos.
Okay, so that's not a bad idea, right? So if you guys are working together and you're on separate laptops, you can just be able to commit into GitHub, and that way you don't even have to be next to each other, which is kind of against what I want you to do. But it's at least good experience for how you might be working in industry on stuff. Okay, not exactly the best learning environment though. Okay, so let me open Xcode and just give you a really, really quick kind of overview. So that was Xcode. I'm going to create a new project. Yes, question.
Is there a specific version of Xcode that we need?
Use Xcode 5.
Should I use Xcode 3.2.6?
Xcode is free.
My laptop, like, won't install.
Yes. Okay. Most likely it will. Well, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with iOS 7, and I think you have to have Xcode 5 to get the iOS 7 SDK. Hmm.
right? You just need like the Maverick software.
Yeah, I think you'll probably need to upgrade to Mavericks or Mountain Lion. Mountain Lion's a little more stable right now, but I mean I run Mavericks on a lot of my stuff. I haven't run into too many issues. I mean, most everything is solvable at this point, or at least someone has a patch. So I would upgrade to Mavericks and then do that, and it's free, which is great. So you get what you pay for, I guess, though. Okay, so most everything that we're going to be doing in this class, we're going to start out with a single view application. We're really going to go over most of this next time. So product name, let's call this example. Keep it very generic. Company identifier. If you were starting a company and you had something there, I'm just going to put this as SMU. You can put whatever your company identifier is. Maybe it's your team name. You guys come up with a team name, and that's your company identifier. You can use it there. And then the class prefix, I'm just going to leave that blank. And I'm going to say that I'm building something just for the iPhone, although you can do things for the iPad, and you can do things universally. So if you're going to build an application that's universal, it doesn't really mean too much. It just means that you're telling Xcode, I need to create an interface both for iPhone and for iPad. Okay. I'm just going to do iPhone right here. Okay, so you'll see source control, create Git repository on my Mac, and it's going to create it inside of probably the example directory, right? So we create, let's go ahead and replace everything that's in there. Okay, so in Xcode, you'll see basically the file explorer over here, and then a bunch of different ways that you can look at things. You can look at errors. You can look at some profiling in your debug session, right? So you can do some active profiling on the iPhone as your app is running. So this is a very kind of introductory interface for some of the debugging. You can go look for memory leaks. You can also open up things like the instruments panel and really delve into, say, how you're accessing the network, hard disk, all of that things that are there. Well, not hard disk, but you know what I'm saying. On this side, basically here, let me make this a little bit smaller so you can still see me. So basically, you'll have these things up here where you can just kind of hide and push everything back out. So depending on how you want to work with Xcode, I'm not going to go. You can go into Xcode and really kind of mess around with all the stuff that's there. I'm not going to just go over it all with you. I don't think that's a whole kind of thing with your time, but I do want to show you some of the Git things that are there, because it sounds like if you've worked with even GitHub, or if you've been on Windows and used Tortoise Git, then a lot of this graphical interface is going to be pretty familiar. So iOS, I think starting with iOS Xcode 3, everything that you build is kind of part of the storyboard, right? Instead of these things called nib interfaces, right? So the storyboard is where you're going to do a lot of your interface design, okay? And it's powerful because it allows you to reuse a lot of the code that you've done as long as you code properly with the storyboard, okay? So we'll talk a little bit, next time about model and view and controller. But for right now, I've got this thing right here, which is my view controller, okay? And I can zoom out a little bit, right? So this is my view controller. And let's say I wanted to do a couple of things. I can add a button to it. Let's just add a button really, really quickly. Oh, can't do it. The reason for that is I need to zoom in on this so that it's active. When I zoom out, it's assuming that I'm wanting to connect a lot of the different view controllers that are there, so I can make connections to them and basically kind of guide my way through a user interface. Okay? So if I zoom in on that, that means this is a view controller that I want to mess with. I'm just going to put a button on it, and it'll do something. By the way, these blue lines, always use the blue lines, or try to always use the blue lines, because you can set up auto constraints that you kind of create this. As long as you use the blue lines, it'll go into landscape mode really, really easily and quickly. Auto constraints, I think, were Xcode 4 something if they were actually thrown in there. But it's really good to use those. Not that you can't set up your own constraints. So I have this view controller that I want to do something with. Move this around. Let's say I wanted to go in here. I can take a table view controller, which is basically, it just means that I have this table view, and I can make connections. Actually, let me go ahead and just use a table view, the navigation controller. Right, so I've got some different navigation controls. We'll talk about all of this next time, but I just want to do something here so that, okay, I'm going to start off my application in the navigation controller. I'm going to make this cell, when I click on it, I want to open up the view that I just created. Okay, so the way that I can do that here, let's just make this a little bit smaller so you can still kind of see me. I'm going to go here, and this table view, I'm just going to create some static cells. And so this one right here, if I want to connect this up to this view, I'm just going to control click, right this, and say I want that to be a push. Okay, so if I were to run this, let's go ahead and run this on the 4-inch 64-bit, it's going to open up the emulator. Wow, that is gigantic. There. Okay, so now when I click this, oh my gosh, magic. I didn't even write any code, right? I'm using, right? Normally, when you create a view controller, the first thing you're going to do is subclass it, okay? Right? You're going to create your own class and inherit from UI view controller, and you're going to take care of all of the interface and programming there. The way that I just did this, probably you won't ever do, but that's okay. So I can hit do something right here. It doesn't do anything because I need to hook up outlets. I need to subclass this and tell it what to do, okay? So we'll go back, but you get a lot of this for free, right? A lot of the things you can do here. Okay, so now when I'm in here, if I go up here to source control, I can go ahead and commit everything that I've done. So I'm going to do a commit. I'm going to give it a message. Say added the table view controller, added table view, and one single view with static cells. Okay, and it's going to go through and it's going to tell me everything that I did. Everything that I'm committing is really just part of the main storyboard here, right? So it had done the initial commit when it created the Git repository. It added all of my view controller. The one thing that I've modified was the storyboard. I'm going to commit one file. Excellent. So now let's say I wanted to do something with that class. I've got a table view controller that's sitting in my storyboard. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and subclass it. Right? I'm going to create my own class that inherits from table view controller. Okay? So I can go up here to File, New, File. I'm going to create an Objective-C class. And I'm going to inherit from UI table view controller. Bam. And we'll just call this SMU table view controller. Okay, next. Create. Really happy with myself here. Okay, so it's got a bunch of things that basically have come in. It wants to know how many sections are in your table, how many rows, all of that stuff you're going to be creating with a model that you're going to have. Right now, I'm just going to say, okay, I've got one section, I've got one row in my section. Yeah? I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now in my storyboard, I'm going to go back out here to my table view controller. And if I select it and go over here to the inspector, I can go ahead and subclass this, right? So if I go in here to the identity inspector, it's telling me that this view controller is of type class UI table view controller, right? But I actually want it to be SMU table view controller, okay? So now instead of calling the generic table view controller class, it's going to call my class, which is inherited from that, okay? So now if I were to run this, so I go ahead and stop it, I'm hitting the stop button. If I were to run this again on the iPhone emulator here, I'll run this. I'm going to get a seg fault. Yeah. So I basically told this thing that I have static cells. The cells aren't going to change that are in the table. But in my table view, so I'll go ahead and stop this. In my view controller here, there are functions that this thing is calling for dynamically allocating cells right here. And since I am subclassing this, it's calling my class for all of that. And I'm not doing it properly for a static cell. I'm actually just doing this for, I'm setting it up as if it were dynamic. Okay? All right, so I get a seg fault. Okay. Anyway, you don't have to understand that. What I wanted to do is just get a seg fault so that I could say, oh, okay, you know, basically, let's go out here and I'm going to go to my history. No. So what I really want to do is this right here, looking back at it. I'd like to discard all of these changes that I made. So I can discard changes in this and go back to my last commit. Right? So if I were to do that, now when I go back here to my storyboard, why is that SMU table view controller still there?
Oh yeah, you discarded changes on that one.
Ah, so source code, discard all changes. And now I'm back to UI table view controller. Right, so I can do things like that. I also could have created a separate branch where I'm going to, oh, you know, checking this out, I'm going to do something here. And then I can change and I can go and I can create a new branch, right? So if I were to go to source control, new branch, I'm going to call it, you know, simple view branch create. It's automatically going to switch me over to that branch. And all of the commits that I do are going to be along that branch unless I want to merge it with the main branch. Everything I do over there is not going to be part of the master. Okay? So all of that is built into Xcode, and it just kind of uses Git by default. Any questions on that? Pretty simple, especially for the first day of class. I think you guys are okay. Yeah? Okay. We've got basically 15 minutes left of class. Questions?
I was curious if you thought one was better than the other versus nibs and storyboard.
I like storyboard, and I feel like Apple likes storyboard too because they're trying to transition out of nib. And so like a lot of the functions that are like init with nib and that they're going to be deprecated as you go further along. I like storyboards just because, you know, you can copy and paste out of one storyboard into another, and as long as you're, you know, properly coding in the model view controller kind of style, it should be fine. Like you could just reuse.
Mix and match like the nibs and the storyboards.
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever tried. I mean, basically, there is a nib in the storyboard. Like, I mean, it's kind of embedded in there. It's just you don't really have access. Yeah, you don't really have access to it. I like storyboards also because it gives you a nice kind of flow. So you can kind of make logic out of a lot of things, and other programmers can come and look at your storyboard and almost immediately get an idea of how your app kind of flows and navigates through it.
So yeah, it seems easier to look at it versus that.
And it's just, I mean, from a designing perspective, I like having everything out there, being able to kind of zoom in and out and add things really, really quickly. Or you don't have to use the storyboard, really. I mean, you can create a lot of things in code. You know, you can do things programmatically. And we're not going to create view controllers programmatically, but we will create different things inside the view programmatically. So like buttons, sub views, scroll views, that kind of thing. We will create those. And we're going to do all of this within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have one more question about that.
Yeah, go for it.
Assignment 1, it says buttons created in storyboard and programmatically. So you want us to do it like 2 separate ways, or what does that mean?
Yeah, drag a button out in one of the views and have it, you know, update the interface in some way when you touch it.
That's just like how you would do it normally with storyboard, right?
and then add it programmatically. So you'll have a view that in its view did load, you will have something that creates a button, tells it where to go on screen, and then basically gives a selector that will execute a block of code in a different thread when you hit it.
Is that adding functionality, or is that adding like a little extra step just to learn how to do it programmatically?
It's learning. Basically, it's a little extra step. It's just learning how to do it programmatically. I just want you to learn how to do it programmatically because sometimes you'll want a user interface that is going to be based. You'll want that to be changed and have different options based on the model that you have and you're trying to do things with. So if you have different options for say some audio file, you want to have different options for the user to be able to control things with. Question?
When do we demo our labs?
So you can demo them during lab time or during office hours, or just email me. A lot of the time, my office door is open all the time. Just walk up, give me a knock. If it's not open, just knock on it. I'll tell you if I'm in the middle of a meeting or something, right? But just come on by, and you can show me at any time, really. Before 5 p.m. on Friday. If if there's something happens, especially like if I have to be pulled away and it's my fault that you're not able to show me something, well, you can show it to me later, but turn in the source code, right? I can always take your source code, which is your a packaged, it's like a zip file of your Xcode project, and I can run it on my phone at home if I needed to. I'd really like for you to be there because if there is any kind of, a lot of these things are going to need some tweak. If you need to explain something to me, it's just better if you're right there. Other questions? I'm going to try and be as accessible as possible. So if you email me, I'll try and get back to you. I might get back to you at a weird hour during the night. It's just because my wife and I just had a new baby, and I'm awake at different times of the night. Okay, so that I'll be checking email, I'll be doing things. It also might be like you might email me at 8 o'clock, and I'm getting 2 hours of sleep, and I don't get back to you until 10 o'clock. So I'm going to try and this is priority 1 for me. The second I wake up, I'm going to go in and check email and try to be as accessible as possible. But there might be some lags of time when I'm doing other stuff. Good? That's it. That's all I got, unless you got questions.
When would you like us to come get a phone license?
Sure. If you want to do it now, we can do it now. Oh, you know what? Let's wait till Monday.
How does the 5,000 registration?
So some of for 7,000 level credit, there are some things are optional in some of the labs that are there.
Does it matter with teams?
That's a great question. Not too much. Not too much. I think if you wanted to mix people that are taking 5 and 7,000 level, that's okay.
As far as the 7 versus the 5,000 level goes, that's not a you thing.